There is a delay between the meeting and the broadcast of approximately 30 seconds. Webcasting officer, please can you commence the broadcast and confirm?
Hi, Emma, we're live now.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. Before we commence with the proceedings this evening, I can confirm that this evening's meeting is a non-decision making committee. The Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for this remote meeting this evening, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce the speakers in the order at which the request to speak has been made, unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while we're in the meeting. Members, you are asked to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video if you have interference on your audio feed. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between speakers and other attendants hearing you. There is a presentation for this evening. This will be shared on the screen as part of the business item. If you have any problems viewing the presentation, please let the Chairman know through the chat function. When referring to an officer's report, please quote the relevant page and paragraph number. There's no private business for this evening's meeting. However, if we do need to move into private session, members must make sure that their venue and connection is private. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, please attempt to rejoin the meeting and we will readmit you. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed. For a request to speak for a point of order, the chat function is subject to the access information regimes of FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of CLLR before their name, and officers have a prefix of officer. There is a minute taker for this meeting and a meeting facilitator. I can confirm the meeting is quorate. The Performance Management Scrutiny Committee consists of the following members. The Chairman is Councillor Mick Radley. The Vice Chairman is Councillor Peter Swear. The remaining members are Councillors Coleridge, Councillor Caudle, Councillor Dervish, Councillor Everard, Councillor Remen, Councillor Rose and Councillor Unsworth. For this evening's meeting, we do have apologies from Councillor Unsworth. Also in attendance this evening are representatives of the Cabinet. We have the Leader of the Council, Councillor Graham Butland. We have Councillor Kevin Bowers, Councillor John McKee in attendance. We also have officers in attendance. These are Tracy Hedford, Business Solutions Manager for Agenda Item 6, James Sinclair, Commercial Manager for Agenda Item 7, and we also have two Corporate Directors in attendance, which are Dominic Collins and Chris Fleeton. Chairman, I now hand the meeting over to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Emma. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I am the Chairman. I'm being assisted by the Governance Officer and Meeting Facilitator who will help me to identify when people want to speak and to manage notifications through the chat function. Obviously can't see all of you, so please let me know through the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection. Please also remember to mute your microphone when you finish speaking. Members, please can I remind you that tonight's committee is a non-decision making meeting, but when I require your agreement, silence will be taken as assent. Members, we also have a number of Cabinet members in attendance this evening in respect of item 5 on the agenda, which is introduction to the Investment and Development Programme. I would therefore like to welcome Councillor Graham Butland as Leader of the Council, Councillor Tom Cunningham, I'm not sure if Tom was here. Oh yes. Councillor Kevin Bowers, Councillor John McKee and Councillor Frankie Rickey. As the meeting facilitator has confirmed the attendance of members and officers for this meeting, I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So the first item is agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. So do we have any apologies from any member of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee?
Chairman, we have apologies for Councillor Unsworth. We've got no further apologies to give for the committee. Chairman, since we commenced this meeting, we do have Councillor Peter Swear in attendance. And if I may, could we just test his connection to the meeting, please?
Indeed, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Good evening, Emma.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Swear. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, that all sounds good. Okay, so moving on then to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do any members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Please indicate you wish to speak in the chat function. I'm just checking the chat function. No, there's nothing in the chat function. So I'll take that there are no more declarations. So we'll now proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Members, for this item, I will be seeking your agreement. Therefore, silence will be assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue in respect of the minutes, please indicate via the chat function. Do any members have any objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting held on the 2nd of June 2021? Just one more check in the chat. Okay, so no comments in the chat function. So thank you for that, members. I'll take that as your agreement. And we'll now move to item 4, which is public question time. Members, there are no registered speakers this evening for public question time, so I'll proceed to item number 5, introduction to the Investment and Development Programme. Members, the report for this item is set out on pages 6 to 11 of your agenda and is for noting only. Can I please invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to introduce the report to the committee and provide the corresponding presentation. So Councillor Butland, over to you. I think you need to come off mute, right?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and
Okay.
thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this short presentation to you on what I think will increasingly become a very important part of the activities of the Council. And that was really why we wanted to give Scrutiny the opportunity, at or the earliest opportunity, to begin to understand what we're about on this, and also to give you the opportunity to think about how you might wish to monitor this, rather than something which we go ahead with and you might ask us to do something later on, because this is something that needs to involve the whole of the Council. If I could move on, please, 2 slides. I don't know who's moving the slides. Is it me? No, it's not me. Thank you. Right. So clearly, local government finance and local authorities, this is not something new. We have had to garner our resources for a good many years now, with changes that have taken place, particularly with the significant reduction in central government grants, etc. And we have done that actually very successfully over the period of time. And on this slide, which I know you had the slides earlier in the day, so I'm not going to go in the detail, have shown just some examples of where we've been able either to generate more income or to achieve savings without abandoning services. And also, of course, we have a very ambitious programme around investment and some rather significant projects which are going on, including Horizon 120 and the development of Manor Street. So the thought of the Cabinet, if I can move on to the next one, was to say, in spite of that, there is a gap, as members will know from the budget proposals, that needs to be closed. Our best estimate is that's going to be somewhere in the region of 1.6 million over the next 4 years, although one has to say that there are a lot of uncertainties in terms of government decisions about local government funding, etc. but our best estimate at the moment is that the gap is likely to be in the region of 1.6 million. And we wanted to approach that in a more coordinated way rather than a piecemeal, a bit of, well, where do we save a bit of money here or what do we do? So we worked on this programme, and I brought together some members of the Cabinet, a small group, to work on this. And that's Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Bowers, Councillor McKee and Councillor Ritchie. I don't know whether Councillor Cunningham is with us tonight. If he isn't, he was just going off for his second jab when I spoke to him about an hour ago. So that may explain why. And we're looking at the 4 areas of how we might be able to close the gap. And there, Chairman, are the 4 bullet points at the top of this slide. Strategic investment, looking for potential capital build projects that can make revenue income. How can we translate capital into sustainable income? Asset management, we have a significant portfolio of assets. Are there any that we can make more efficient, either by increasing their income or indeed in some cases disposing of them and using that income more effectively, perhaps on acquiring potential new assets? Commercially, there are things that we do, a lot of services that we do. Are there some that we can identify to grow our income? And can we make ourselves more efficient and effective in some areas to produce lower expenditure? And finally, treasury management, using our cash reserves to grow more income. Clearly, all local authorities need to maintain a reasonable standard of reserves. You will be aware, Chairman, that the actual payback on that in terms of interest is almost at an all-time low. And so we have been looking at how we can ensure that we keep sufficient reserves, but make the best use of reserves to produce a better payback for the taxpayer. So those are the 4 work streams that we are using to work towards bridging the 1.6 million gap. Each work stream has its own specific objectives and deliverables, but as a programme, what we are attempting to achieve is as set in the 7 bullet points below. And again, I won't go through them all, but actually delivering increasing income, making best use of our current portfolios, looking at a robust approach to future capital and borrowing, and there will be changes that will take place as a result of the government changing the rules on the Public Works Lending Board. So, and also I think it would be fair to say some rather risky investments that have been taken by some local authorities in the way in which they've dealt with some of those things. So clearly it is a significant task to close a gap of 1.6 million without impacting adversely on the services that our residents come to rely on and look towards us producing. So moving on to the next slide is the work that we have been doing in the first quarter of this calendar year to get the programme off the ground and to set up an initial pipeline, setting out projects that are being explored to help us meet the revenue gap. And you will see that we have adopted a process for doing that from project initiation, and we're very much working with all staff in the organisation to come forward with ideas. Some that you know what we're saying is nothing's out of bounds. If you think it's off the wall, don't worry. It may have, if not something that can be used itself, a gem of an idea which someone else says, well, that's a bit off the wall, but actually if we were to do something else. And I hope also that we can engage members as well in coming forward with those ideas, which is one of the reasons, Chairman, why I felt it was important that the Major Scrutiny Committee should be aware of what we're attempting to do. We're also brought in a new investment appraisal tool. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but an appraisal tool which will ensure that when we're making decisions, they are sound decisions, that there is a sound financial basis to them, but at the same time, we also look at what the added value of any particular project may be, and particularly whether it is a project which will bring added social impact to our communities. So we have gone back, first of all, to 2016, because we had a lot of ideas submitted then, just to see whether there are things which may well now have, if you like, found their time. And also, there will be later this week, next week, a senior managers meeting where we will be also concentrating on this whole programme that we are doing. I thought, Chairman, from the next slide, it might be useful just to see the structure that we have put in for doing this. So at the bottom there are four work streams: strategic investment, asset management, commercial, and treasury management. That is overseen by the Investment and Development Programme Group, which is a group of officers. That feeds into the Investment and Development Steering Group of the 5 members that of Cabinet that I mentioned. But that then feeds into the Joint Executive Team, because I was very keen that we didn't end up with half the Cabinet knowing what's going on and the other half not knowing what's going on. So there is, if you like, the group in the steering group who are doing the hard work and the detail, etc., but actually being overseen and, if you like, peer challenged by our fellow members of Cabinet. And of course, we would hope and expect that you will want to have fairly regular updates on the work that's going on, and you may wish at times to delve deeper into some of the proposals that are coming forward. So in terms of how that is done, it's very much about working together to deliver that. And this slide shows the involvement of those various groups through from the idea, the initial feasibility assessment, the business case, the review of the project, and of course a project completion document. Chairman, I've done that quite quickly because I realise that you have quite a lot of other things to do tonight, but I have got asked Dominic Collins to take through the rest of this, which is more of the detail. My colleagues from the investment group are also here if there are specific questions which are in their portfolio, but hopefully if you will allow Dominic to just take us through the rest of the slides, and then we'll happily try and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you, Chairman.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. So having kicked off the programme really at the beginning of the calendar year, and as Councillor Butland has identified with the mobilisation phase, we have, through the work streams and through engagement with Cabinet members, already pulled together a project pipeline. And that project pipeline currently consists of 41 projects, through which we are making combinations of saving money, of making money, and being more efficient with our money and our services. That pipeline totals to £1.8 million over the 4 years of the programme. So we are continuing to emphasise as we develop the programme that this is a 4-year programme. And that's because the £1.6 million gap is identified over the 4 years. But importantly, the gap differs year on year. So we're taking as smooth an approach as we can across the 4 financial years to identify projects. We had actually already, as per the MTFS and the budget setting for this financial year, 21-22, actually covered the gap through reserves. So actually the monies that we are identifying through this programme are on top of that. So therefore you can see in the table in front of you, we are identifying currently just over £100,000 of savings or income generation this year, which is on top of the allocation that we made of reserves for this year to support the gap, which will support us in future years of the programme. What you'll also see is in this table, we've pulled the 41 projects together to highlight the levels of confidence that we've currently got at those projects being delivered. So we have, for example, a series of projects in high, where across those financial years, we've allocated that scoring to suggest that we have got really high confidence as we speak today that those projects will be delivered. And that's because they've either got complete business cases or that they are quite simple savings to make or income to garner. So the high level of confidence projects are those that we think, as of today, we are pretty certain will occur in the programme. We have a series of projects that we've classified as medium, and those projects are those that either are starting their business case development already or are getting towards the end of their business case development, but they still need some surety as to whether they will actually deliver, A, in the financial years as positioned, and B, at all. So there's an element of risk in some of those projects of being taken to fruition, so we've classified those as medium. And we have, admittedly, a large group of projects, but at this stage in a 4-year programme, not unsurprisingly, a large amount of projects that we are currently considering as low confidence because they are ideas that we need to develop business cases for, that we might need to secure feasibility study monies for to develop, or that they may have elements of political or social or deliverability risk that we are still assessing. So that table therefore gives you an idea that we've currently got 41 projects. They've got a difference in rates of confidence of delivery at this stage. But the member colleagues from Cabinet will attest that this figure changes almost on a monthly basis as we go through the projects, as we start to consider them and their business case potential. And even through the programme meetings that we've had so far, we've removed some projects and we've included new projects. So the 1.863 figure really is a live figure as of this week. There's every potential that that will go up and down as the confidence levels of the projects differ, but also as new projects come into the pipeline. And to give you an idea about the sorts of projects we're looking at in the pipeline, they really are from the small to the big. For example, the shared payroll service is one project that we're looking at, something that members may be aware of through the commercialisation work that I know the committee is considering at the minute. We have the potential to expand the work of the shared payroll service, and we're currently estimating a potential revenue income of £20,000 a year. That may come in at a certain time in that 4-year programme and therefore impact on the financial gap that we've got disparately. So that's something we're continuing to investigate. Additional car park advertising, as you can see, potential revenue of £5,000 there. We really are considering every opportunity to support the gaining new income and savings against the budget, and that's something that colleagues are considering currently. And then in the asset management work stream, we have looked at our assets. We have a portfolio of approximately £43 million worth of assets that we develop a large amount of income from over the year. We've now projected over the next 4 years what a level of rent increases, a sustainable, I hasten to add, for the businesses that are renting those facilities, a sustainable potential rent increase across the council's portfolio over the next 4 years, which is suggesting an estimated additional revenue of £140,000. So we are looking for new money, in a sense, that can add on top of the NTFS considerations that were already made previous years and will be making in the future years. And to that end, this slide offers a kind of summary of this year's activity, this financial year's activity, and therefore hopefully you can see how the MTFS process continues, and that very much will be part or a partner, in fact, to the investment and development programme, as colleagues will continue to look at their budgets. Cabinet members will continue to critique budgets of service areas and understand where they can make savings or additional revenue. But as and when new ideas come up, either through those conversations or the engagement I'll touch on in a minute, if there are large projects that we think can need business casing or further development, we will put those into the investment and development programme pipeline, add that resource and that focus of the work streams to work up those business cases and hopefully deliver the income and savings that those business cases can deliver. We've already, as you can see, had a touch point with Cabinet, where we discussed the pipeline and the development programme at the Member Strategy Workshop earlier this year. And we'll be doing so again in October as we work towards the setting of budget for next financial year and assessing where we are on the pipeline. And the steering group continues to progress throughout the year and to support the programme, not only this year, but ongoing. So Councillor Butland's already referenced that we are working across the authority on this. This is not just a programme that is engaging a few people in a few work streams. We are taking this across the whole of the authority. And as such, having already developed the pipeline that we have, we're looking to add to that through engagement with our staff. This, again, as Councillor Butland referenced, is something that we're used to. So the Better at Business programme did this several years ago, and we are certainly supporting that messaging with colleagues and officers across the authority. But we are also emphasising that this is the next challenge. We do need to find this 1.6 million over the next 4 years, and we need everybody's help to do so. And as such, we have developed some internet pages on the Beehive site. We sent emails out highlighting the programme to colleagues last week. We also put it into the CEO email, and we had a manager's briefing, which we're having tomorrow, which builds on some staff briefings we've already been doing actually over the last 3 or 4 months. And we will be taking a conversation to our management conference, so bringing all of our managers together next week for our annual conference or workshop, at which we'll be including a session on the investment and development programme, enticing ideas from our colleagues as to how we can make additional monies and save additional monies. Those ideas will be garnered throughout the summer. And in September, we'll be looking at those project ideas actually as they come through. But September will be a touch point and a gateway in the programme as we assess those ideas and start to see if they can impact on next year's budget and indeed the next 3 years' budget as we look forward to this 4-year programme. My final slide is just to almost segue into one of your items later on, actually, around commerciality. And enterprise. We have, as part of this programme, also considered how we can boost our officers and our colleagues' skills to think through commerciality and what it means for the authority. As I say, something that I know this committee is spending a lot of time thinking about. As such, we have engaged with the East of England LGA, and they are offering us some courses to support our colleagues to think differently about our services, think differently about how we deliver them, but also how we resource them, so that, again, we can inspire that thinking in our colleagues as we develop commercial propositions in our services to develop savings, efficiencies and income. And as such, we're also offering various pocketbook resources and other things that, as discussed with the chairman of the committee, we can certainly offer to members of this committee and members across the authority to help inspire thinking in this endeavour. So the programme's live, the programme's active, and the programme is very detailed. I hope you can see through the presentation. And as such, I'll pause there, and I'm sure Councillor Butland and colleagues and I will look forward to some questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Butland and Dominic, for that very thorough presentation and very much to the point. I think we all shared at budget time the knowledge that we had a shortfall of 1.6 million and potentially more than that if depending how things come out with the local government settlement, etc., going forward. So I really welcome this approach that has been taken to focus very significantly on the task that we have in front of us. And I'm really pleased that you chose to come to this committee and to share it with us and to have some feedback from us, and certainly would welcome this into the future, as you suggested, that we could have some feedback of this as we progress. Certainly the structure that you've presented is very well set up, and I like the reporting structure that you're putting in place, and in particular I really do like the involvement of all of the officers across the patch to try to get ideas and add ideas into the pot to try and move this forward. So I think in terms of structure, organisation and direction, to me it looks very good. Obviously the challenge is significant, and that's what we have in front of us. So thank you for that. I will open up now to questions from the rest of the performance committee for any further questions, and I'll add one or two of my own at the end. So I think first off is Councillor Rose. So over to you, Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's just a question really, because for Dominic. Good evening, Dominic. The investment and development programme looks pretty good. There's been a lot of work, I would guess, going into that. But I just wondered just two things. You spoke about rental income as revenue. What would, or how much would you envisage that we might lose with businesses that no longer trade, and how would that impact? And it was muted on Radio 4 finance programme this morning that there could be an interest rate rise. Didn't say when, but they think it's not imminent. But how would that affect or not your investment and development programme? Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic, would you like to take that one, or Graham?
I'm happy to on this, Councillor Butler, or others would like to. Yeah. So thank you. So in terms of our asset portfolio, actually we have been very comfortable in the position of businesses continuing with their tenancies even through COVID, which we'd all recognise as being a once in a generation shock to many markets, including the property market. We've actually worked very proactively with some businesses and offered them rental windows and recovery plans in order to support them to retain their businesses whilst also keeping the income coming to the authority. So I'm confident that we've had probably one of the biggest tests we're going to have around potential voids for our properties, and we remain at well over 90% occupancy for our rental opportunities. So I think other than keeping on top of that and keeping in touch with our tenancies, but also refreshing them as they need to be refreshed, I think we can be confident as we can be that that will continue to be positive. And actually, we have had some businesses move out from London who have relocated to or located to premises that we own in Braintree. So we've even seen a bit of that movement, which anecdotally here is happening, but actually we have factually got some examples of that happening for us. And in terms of interest rate flows, well, I'm not the finance expert. Other colleagues would be probably better placed, and Chris might want to respond to that. But certainly, there's every potential impact on the Treasury management work stream. However, I'm very confident that that's something that we've probably had to master and deal with much more in the past than we have now. And I'm sure we've got the process in place. But Chris, you might want to comment on that one.
Yes, happy to add. If interest rates were to rise, I think it would be a relatively small amount, to be honest. But if they did, obviously with our investments, we would actually benefit from an interest rate rise, and we haven't got a huge amount of borrowing at the moment, so the cost of borrowing wouldn't be significant. So in the short term, at least, a small increase in interest would probably be of benefit to the council.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for those replies. So,
Chairman, could I?
Yes,
sorry,
indeed.
I don't know whether Councillor Bowers, who has the lead on asset management, or Councillor McKee, who's got the financial side, would like to add anything. But
by all means, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to add to that, it's akin to reiterate what Dominic was saying, is we have supported a number of businesses with rent deferrals over the last year, and doing as much as we can to support. We're in a lucky but a fortunate position where our businesses have, at this stage, have seemed to have sustained the pandemic with the support offered by the council, which we will obviously continue to try to do. But obviously we will monitor that going forward as much as that is needed in regards to that support. But as Dominic alluded to, at this stage, we don't see that as a risk going forward. But obviously we will monitor that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor McKee, anything or yeah?
If I may just comment on interest rates, as you're probably aware, Councillor Rose, we take advice continually from our advisors. In fact, there's a meeting tomorrow, I think, where they're going to present to us, and I'm sure they're going to raise the issue of interest rates at that meeting, so that officers can make assessments as to whether or not it's what our strategy would be in Treasury management, but as Chris says, small changes in interest rates will give us small gains in our bank borrowing, deposits, and we have little borrowing. We'd have to take a long-term view on our market investments as to what that might do, but that's a longer-term investment strategy anyway. So I don't think interest rates need to worry us in the short term, and I'm sure that our advisors will keep us up to date. I mean, as well as quarterly, but they advise the financial officers regularly as to what might happen with markets and our deposits and our interest.
Okay, well, thank you for a very comprehensive response across the patch there from everyone. So we'll move on now to Councillor Raymond, who has a question. Councillor Raymond, have you?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you to all the Cabinet members for being here tonight, and a very summarised presentation by the officers and the leader of the council, Councillor Butland. I have a question for Dominic. Good evening, Dominic. There are a few questions, short questions. One is around the rental income. You mentioned in your presentation that there is going to be an increase of 140,000 increase over the 4 years. Is it the usual increase we get, like we increase a percentage of the rents, because sometimes we have in the contracts annual increase of 2%, or the increase would be additional to what we get on annually? That's one question. Secondly is on the advertising, how the pandemic has affected the businesses, because can we give them some sort of programs to the businesses if they advertise some sort of financial help towards businesses, so that we can encourage them to advertise with us? Thank you. That's
okay, thank you for your question. Dominic, if you're able to answer those.
Happy to, thank you. So to your first question, Councillor Raymond, on the rental income, so the 140,000 over the 4 years is additional to the current contracted elements of increases, and that's because we've gone through all of the rental agreements that we have. There are various rental agreements that will be coming to term over the period and will give us an opportunity to renegotiate rents, but also it will be part of the flexibility in some of those rental agreements that we've got that will allow us to seek further increases. However, that £140,000, I think, is in the context of the current stock of properties offering us a rental value of about just over £3 million. So I think we need to absolutely take our responsibility, as a landlord, but also as a financial authority that needs to be sustainable. We have no interest whatsoever in increasing rental levels to an unsustainable level for the businesses, because that does us a disservice, because we'll lose those businesses as renters and we'll also do those businesses a disservice as well. So the rental increases will continue to be as a responsible landlord, but also a commercial landlord. So we'll need to take that balance, but that's additional to what's already in the MTFS budget, which is profiled. In terms of advertising, I think I'm very happy to say I think we've supported businesses as best we can through the pandemic. Not only the businesses that we directly have relationships with and commercial relationships with, in that we, as I said earlier, we've been giving various businesses rental deferments and various holidays and repayment plans in order to support them at this time. But also we've been spending the government's money that they've been putting through us in terms of additional restrictions grant and other local grant funds that we've been able to provide businesses, upwards of well over £60 million of money that we've received from government that we've focused through to business support. So that, alongside our own programme of business support, which has included local young entrepreneurship programmes and work that we're doing with North Essex partners around Click It Local, for example, which is an Amazon-style website referral system that is used for independent shop owners rather than larger owners. Hopefully we've been providing a lot of support to businesses, and therefore they'll continue to operate and advertise as they need to and they're required to. So yes, I think we've done as much as we can so far, but we're certainly, through the refresh of our economic plan that we're starting to work on, we'll be able to understand what further support we can offer businesses in the coming years.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, Councillor Courtauld is next.
Councillor Redley, if I'm apologies, if I may,
Sorry?
I think Councillor Bowers' hand up. I wondered if you wanted to
I'm
add
sorry,
to that
I
point.
think I've probably covered it up with the chat box. Sorry, Councillor Bowers, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to come in there on the first question to obviously concur with Dominic's view in regards the rental and the rental increases. It will always be the balance of obviously being responsible, but obviously with the commercial aspect. So it's just to obviously concur with that. The reason I mainly put my hand up was in the absence of Councillor Cunningham, just to say a little bit about the business support and what we've done as a council, not just now during the pandemic and all the untold support we are trying to give and that, but also what we, through business support and business engagement, what we was doing pre-pandemic, and we have got a very, very good record. And I know myself, pre-pandemic, used to go out with Councillor Cunningham and do business visits with local businesses, and being able to let business get the information of what might be available for them. I'm sure they will be continuing in when they are possible again, through myself, Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Spray in our area. So it's just to say that sort of engagement has always been there and always will be there. And I think Dominic has told me also, during this pandemic, there's been a lot more there's been even more engagement with the council regards updates and how we can support, and we will just garner that going forward to actually probably give us even a better offering through business engagement and the business growth going forward. So I just wanted to sort of add that in, because I'm sure Councillor Cunningham would have made them comments should he have been here. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Bowers, thank you for that contribution. Any more on that question before we move on? No, I can see no further hands. So I think Councillor Courtauld, you were next to ask your question. Councillor Courtauld, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just taken my time to unmute. I think this one is probably for Dominic, but I was just wondering, if we're trying to be commercial, is there a system of rewarding officers who come up with a wacky idea that makes us or saves us £5,000 or £50,000 or even £500,000? Do they get a bonus or a percentage or a massive medal?
I'm sure something sparkly will always help inspire ideas. So interestingly, this is a point that the steering group have questioned officers with in some of the meetings we've had recently, and it's something that obviously, well, I say obviously, something that seems quite common practice in the private sector, not necessarily something that we tend to emulate in the public sector, but we do have various reward schemes already in place to support our colleagues who come up with ideas. We already actually have a kind of an idea scheme that the authority runs for the colleagues and officers to come up with ideas, either for service delivery or other factors. And we have a kind of a small reward system that way. So it's really helpful suggestion. It's something we are considering, and we have taken some advice on already. So it's something that we're considering that we might be adding to the programme, and we will be discussing that with the steering group going forward.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think Councillor Everard is next. Right, yes, Councillor Everard, please, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman.
You
it occurs to me there's going to be a hell of a lot of legal stuff going on here. I just wondered how we're going to handle all this. Yeah, and the other thing is that, of course, this scheme is essential. Thank you.
Would anybody like to answer the question on the legal side? Yes, Councillor McKee.
Well, as it's in my portfolio, I just recently had an update. In fact, we are beefing up the legal team for this and other reasons. And you will see very shortly that we're adding at least one FTE to the legal team, including paralegals. So yes, Councillor Everard, you're right. But it's not entirely about this programme that we're doing that for. We clearly got other reasons why we want to beef up our legal team. Kim Cole have come in and done a great job of sorting out some of the things that we probably should have done before, and now she's turning her attention to making it into a legal team that it represents the quality of council that we are and wish to continue being. So you're right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question and indeed answer. Just looking at the chat box, I believe that.
Councillor Radley, apologies again. Councillor
Yeah.
Bowles' hand is raised.
Right. Yes, indeed. I thought that was a note from the previous one, but obviously not. Councillor Bowers, please, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to follow on from that point about the legal, just to sort of put members' mind at rest with any sort of extra costs that are incurred on any of these projects are obviously factored in to any decision making. So if there's anything that is extra, it will always be factored in at the start and during the business case process. So the decisions of when we're deciding to go forward with any project whatsoever, all those costs are considered and within the financial viability of each individual project. So just to put members' minds at rest on that as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for that contribution. So a quick comment from Councillor Rose. All right, Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Now, I'm just going back to Councillor Butland's opening speech where he was encouraging everybody to put in ideas, which I would buy into, because in my working life I've done something similar. But I've always said to my people that there's no such thing as a bad idea. It's just that some are better than others, Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think a lot of nodding heads, so I think we're concurring on a lot of that. Well, I don't think there's any more questions in the chat box. I've got a couple of questions, if I may be to conclude. One of them, well, it seems to be a lot of discussion about asset management. I guess that's expected and quite right. It's interesting to know that the portfolio currently is about £43 million, as what was said earlier. And if you look at the return from that, the return is quite good and quite a good contribution. So really bears out the strategy that was set in place, I guess, a while back and now bearing fruit. As that's such a significant contribution, is that something strategically you're thinking about growing that portfolio as being, do you see that as one of the big drivers to getting to where we need to be in terms of the gap, as well as obviously a lot of the perhaps smaller projects? Is that strategically in your mind? I can ask that Councillor Butland, I guess, or Councillor McGee.
Well, Councillor Bowers, I'll let him go.
Councillor Bowers even, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just think on that point, on asset management, all the work streams, obviously all 4 work streams will be playing their part, and it's kind of been decided that we're not sort of saying, oh, this work stream will be targeted for this amount, you know, I mean, it will all come together. I think with asset management, it's played a big part in the organisation in the past, and will obviously play a big part going forward, but we're always looking at different areas where we can maximise that in line with what we are allowed to do as a local authority, and that's also being sort of reviewed at the moment, will be part of this process as well as a strategy for asset management going forward. So we will be looking at all avenues, but in the realm of the 4 different work streams. We're not sort of expecting a certain amount come from one and not the other. So, and it goes back to the point that Councillor Butland and Councillor Rose means about the ideas and that kind of thing, because any ideas that people can put forward will be considered, and in whichever work stream that they fit into. But I think that will hopefully put your mind at rest, but that's how it will be looked at within every individual work stream. But asset management is a big part, and we are reviewing that going forward about how we can maximise that. From we've got a brilliant starting point, but how will that look for in the future to the betterment of the authority, but ultimately for our residents and paying for our services. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. And just one other last question for me really is the issue of the changes at the loan board. You mentioned that. Can you just enlighten us a little bit on those what those are likely to be, and how, if and will it impact on us?
Yeah, well, yes, Chairman. I mean, it will impact upon all local authorities. Chris will be the expert in. He's looking to the skies, but he is the expert on that. But certainly, it is, and I'll ask him to go into the detail. But it is a result of the government being concerned about the actions, I think, of some local authorities and possibly distorting the market, if you like. But I'll leave it to Chris to give you the details, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, it's just recent changes, PWLB rules. The government has said that if a council invests in a project purely to generate additional income, then in future they won't be allowed to borrow money from PWLB, not just for that particular project, but for all projects that you're involved in. So that would prevent us from accessing fairly low borrowing rates, and we'd have to look for alternative areas. Now, it's new to all local authorities at the moment, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that's interpreted. I think it will potentially prevent authorities from borrowing money to invest in property and assets outside the district, where you do so to invest in property, etc., within the district. You will have to justify that it is not solely to generate extra revenue income, that there is some community benefit, some benefit to the residents, etc. So it's very new legislation, and it'll be interesting how it is interpreted over the next few months and years, but it's something we obviously are very mindful of, and as Councillor McKee's already said, we're having an update from our Treasury Management Advisors, Arling Close, tomorrow, so we'll know a bit more about it then.
Okay, thank you for that. So, members, does anybody have a last call? Nothing else on the chat box? Anybody else? No. Okay then. Well, thank you very much, members. If there are no more detailed questions for Councillor Butland and the team, I will remind members that we're asked to note the proposals in the report today only. And I'd like to thank Councillor Butland and all of the team and supporting officers for their presentation tonight. I'm really pleased that you have brought it in front of this committee, because I think it's a very important part of the process, and I don't know if other members will support this, but I do believe we'd like to take up your suggestion to come back to us at an appropriate date in the future, shall we say, that we can plan into all of our schedules, to keep in touch with this, because it's a very important part of moving forward for the council, and we recognise that and want to support that. So thank you very much. So Councillor Butland and team and supporting officers, if you would like to leave the meeting at this point, you're very welcome, and thank you for coming. If you wish to stay, then equally you're very welcome to stay. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on now, proceed to item 6, which is the fourth quarter and annual performance report for 2021. Members, the report on this item is set out on pages 12 to 47 on your agenda and is for noting only. Please can I invite Tracy Headford, Business Solutions Manager, to introduce the report.
Chairman, just before that happens, I have deliberately stayed on because, of course, Councillor Bebb had responsibility for this area. Under the change of portfolios, I now have responsibility for the performance management side, and Councillor McKee has the lead in terms of the financial side. And I just thought it would be courteous to the committee to stay on for this, and not, if I put it, well, I was going to use a colloquialism, but I mean leave, and then you say, oh, well, it would have been useful to know. I wouldn't necessarily come unless you specifically want me, because Tracy, who provides all the information to us, etc., is first class, and I don't want in any way to take away the excellent work she did. But I just felt I would say that if at some stage there is something in this that you feel you want member answers for, then we'll be happy to provide that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that particularly when we get to question time at the end, I guess that it will be perhaps useful if you could hear some of that and take away with any particular issues any members have. So thank you for staying on. So Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So the fourth quarter and annual performance management report reports on the performance of the Council between the 1st of January and the 31st of March 2021. It provides a roundup of the activities as at the end of year, or as at the end of the financial year. So the report was presented to Cabinet on Monday night and was well received, recognising that it's been a difficult year, but that we've managed to ensure that the bulk of services were delivered in a timely manner. Achievements were highlighted, and the Chair applauded the work of our volunteers and the support provided to residents and businesses by staff from town and parish councils. So taking you through the report, as at the end of the year, we have 10 projects that are complete, 32 projects that are on track and progressing well, and there are 10 projects that have an amber status, mainly due to the impact of the coronavirus that it's having on some areas of the work. Some of the key achievements from our projects in respect of Section 1 of the local plan, which we share with Culture and Tendering, because that was approved at full council in February. And also the council is now continuing with the Section 2 of the local plan. The draft climate change strategy and cycling strategy was approved at full council in March 2021. We've had just under £63,000 worth of grants distributed to community groups to help with the more vulnerable people. And we've also had a further 67,000 grants distributed through the Council Community Grant Scheme. There's been some work in partnership where the Council has secured £1.7 million to spend on business support, and we're recruiting a programme officer to oversee that programme of works as we speak. So the projects that have an amber status at the end of the year, I'll just take you through those quickly. The first one is in respect of completing the pedestrianisation of Braintree Town Centre. That is purely due to delays that were incurred in the fourth quarter due to the changeover of contractors that was required. As at the end of the fourth quarter, the council was in the final stage of selecting the new contractor. But as you'll probably see if you've been uptown, there has been a lot of progress made in respect of that area now. So the work is progressing well. The next project is around continuing to support and monitor the Superfast Essex or the Superfast broadband delivery. When I last came to you in Q3, that was 89% of our district. We're now at 94% of our district, but it is still marked up as amber because of the fact that the timescales have been impacted by COVID and they're not as where they would like to have been at this time. So it is really purely just because COVID has had an impact on the timescales, and it is work that's being carried out by their contractors, but we're hoping that it will get back on track very shortly. Obviously, there's projects around the NHS England and health facilities across the district. Understandably, the focus has been the fact that we went into another lockdown in the fourth quarter, so it had to be on the pandemic, and obviously the rollout of the testing programme and vaccination programme. We do still remain in contact with this area, and obviously we will continue to support them, and we will work on ongoing projects once we are able to get those back up and running. But we do still have the projects around the regeneration scheme in Braintree Town, which is going to provide facilities or health facilities, surgeries at Sybil Heading and Silver End and Witton. But as at the end of the fourth quarter, there wasn't any update on those projects. In respect of carrying out recreational open spaces, so that's around our play facilities that we provide. We never really bring this one as an amber, so this is the first one for me. We have a timescale for improvements for play areas each year, so we have We nominate 4 play areas, and of the 4 play areas, 3 of them were completed within timescale. One of them was slightly delayed, partly due to getting the right materials and experiencing delay in getting those materials as well. So it was just a couple of months delays, and I can now confirm that those improvements were carried out, and it was just a short delay to that project, and it has now been completed, and that will be reflected in our next performance report. Other AMBER projects are around research and the trial for alternative fuel vehicles, front of us frontline services. Again, this was impacted by the pandemic as staff were allocated to assist with COVID work, and lockdown also added to the delays in the research that was required. Once the teams were working on the project, we're at a point where they can reassess the project, they will actually complete a change control and process and amend the end date and through the correct processes. We have the projects around improving the sports facility at Braintree Sports Centre. Again, this is a project that's been AMBER for a while now. And the works again delayed due to the pandemic. The school sites were shut, and this is a site that is located at a school, but once they did reopen in March, we were able to access the site. So the works I now can confirm have started. So it's hoped that this will not again be AMBER in the future. Last but one is about the new footpath resurface of Rivenhall Village Hall to improve the accessibility. Again, it's just due to lockdown and going into lockdown in the 4th quarter, which has pushed back the timescales and the availability of people to work on the project. So it isn't the last one, is it? The Live Well Child initiatives, again, that is mainly because of the lockdown and the school shutting and not reopening until the 8th of March. There were some work that went on behind the scenes around making sure that we could get the BlitzMe app up and running, so it was ready to be piloted in the schools. But obviously part of that project is having that engagement with the schools, and whilst they were shut, it was more difficult to have that engagement because they had to focus on how they were delivering their lessons. Continuing to deliver a range of initiatives to address social isolation and loneliness is another AMP project, again impacted by the pandemic. It seems ironic really that you obviously want to be able to set up activities to help people that are in social isolation and loneliness, and yet the pandemic is also causing that, but you can't have those events to actually get people out of that situation. So a number of the events had to be cancelled. There was obviously telephone assistance and online assistance provided, and we have been meeting with partner organisations behind the scenes just to make sure that we can continue once we could reopen up. So we obviously recognise it is a big area that is going to be impacted by the pandemic, and we need to obviously do a lot more once we're coming out of lockdown. And the last one is again another health one, just in relation to how we work with the districts in partnership in respect to the NHS primary care networks. Again, it is just due to the pandemic and the fact that they focused on the vaccination programme, and again there is no further update at this time. But talks will be resuming later in the year, so we'll hope to have something in the 1st quarter report for next year. Moving on to the performance indicators, we have a total of 25 performance indicators. However, targets haven't been set for all of them, given the disproportionate impact of the pandemic. But we have 14 performance indicators that retained their target, and of these, 6 met or exceeded their target. 5 missed target by less than 5%, and 3 missed target by more than 5%. Again, just to draw out some of the key achievements for the performance indicators, we delivered a total of 220 affordable homes across the district against a target of 150. We've also granted permission for just under 3,000 homes. There were 1,139 new business startups across the district, just under 3,700 businesses signposted to business support, which is reflected in our low rate of people claiming out of work benefit, which stands at 5.2%. That is a lot lower than the national average, which is 6.5%, and the East of England average, which is 5.6%. Just to quickly take you through the performance indicators that missed target, they are the usual suspects, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but it's obviously the red ones are in respect of percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting. As at the end of the year, it achieved 48.04% against the target of 60%. We are still waiting to have the figures verified by Essex County Council, but obviously the garden waste suspension during the winter months will have some impact on the recycling figures. But just to point out that the dry mix recycling tonnage was the highest we have actually seen in 10 years. Another one is around the average waiting time for applicants on disabled facilities grants. But I would like to just say that there has been some significant work done in this area. And although the target of 90 days hasn't been achieved, if you look at where we were in Q3, it was at 246 days, and this has now been brought down to 136 days. So we are making significant progress in respect of that one. The average call answer in the customer service centre achieved, as at the end of the year, 29 seconds against the target of 15 seconds. The lockdown in the fourth quarter had an impact with the library shutting and residents across the district starting to need sort of clear sacks again, and booking more bulky waste collections because, again, they're on furlough and spending time having clear outs. For the year, just to put it into perspective, the CSC dealt with just under 110,000 calls, but resolved 81% of these at first point of contact, so within the customer service centre. So on reflection, having a call answering time of 29 seconds, I would say is quite acceptable, even if it's not actually meeting our targets. So the amber performance indicators are where they've missed their target by less than 5%, and some of them are very, very close to their targets. So I'll just sort of say what they were. So it was kilograms of residual household waste collected per household. It was 2 kilograms over at 472 against the target of 470. The percentage of invoices paid within 30 days of receipt achieved 98.13% against the target of 99.25%. We have got a new system that's in place now, so it should hopefully start to see some improvement over the next year. The percentage of stage 1 complaints responded to within 7 working days fell slightly short at 89.52% against the target of 90%. The collection rate for council tax and the collection rate for business rates, council tax was 96.65% against the target of 98%, and business rates was 95.72 against the target of 98.5%. So the report does also contain further information on staffing, health and safety and complaints. Just to let you know, we had 152 complaints in the fourth quarter, which is higher than the number of complaints we have received in previous quarters. Of those complaints, 142 were stage 1 complaints. We had 5 stage 2 complaints and a further 5 escalated to stage 3. One thing I would just like to draw your attention to is under the organisational information in respect of our sickness levels. They are the lowest that they have ever been, with a sickness level of 5.52 days for the end of the year against a target of 8 days. That has been a significant improvement over the years. I don't think I've actually ever seen it that low in my time that I've actually worked here. So moving on to the financial performance. I'm not going to go through that in as much detail because I'm not a financial expert, but I do have people on the call that can help if there's any questions. But obviously it does provide a detailed updated review of the financial position as at the end of the year. It examines the outturned spending on day-to-day service provision compared to the budget. And it also includes a summary of the Treasury management activities, the movement on the general fund balance, and a summary of the spend on capital projects in the year. And more importantly, because of the impact that coronavirus has had, it also provides some commentary on the impact on the council's budget position. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Chairman, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I just realised that. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. It was, as always, a very comprehensive and thorough report, and really appreciate you presenting that to us this evening. I think overall, I mean, the last year has been like no other that any of us experienced in terms of all the disruption that the pandemic has caused, and quite frankly, you know, the performance through the year, bearing that in mind, is very good. I mean, there's still a lot of areas where things have moved forward, and clearly the team have done a great job in trying to minimise any disruption and trying to achieve what they can through the year. So it's exceptional performance with all the other challenges that they've had through the year, which has been immense. And just to focus particularly on the financial performance, you know, we see as an overall summary a positive variance to budget of £812,000. I guess we all know that this has been heavily supported by government grants, which nevertheless, they are there for a reason, and that is to give us that support. And even with that support, it does require a lot of very good management of the activities to hold that position. So I think from that perspective, you know, that holds us in good stead. And in particular, the general fund balances have not really deteriorated, apart from the triennial, which is a normal and understandable impact. It's come out positive. So, you know, we've come out of this overall in a reasonably strong position in terms of our, or not really been massively hit, put it like that. We've come out stronger than perhaps we would have done, but with that government support. So it is what it is. But to achieve that position is excellent. So really would like to thank all those involved in through the year in the work they did to try and to keep things moving and to achieve what they've done. So I'd like to pass that on. Thank you. So I'll open up now for questions to the rest of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. And I believe Councillor Raymond is the first. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Tracy, for the report. We, as authority, have done well, given the pandemic and the staffing level and the furloughs, the staff who has been on furlough. So thank you so much, and please pass my thank you to everyone. I have one question. It's relating to the average waiting time for disabled facility grants. We are missing that by 46 days. My question is, what actions or perhaps what resources can we utilize to meet this target? Are we missing this target because of, and I'm just using it as a reference, is it a staffing issue? Is is a central government, or what can we do to mitigate this area? Thank you.
Yep, I can answer that question.
Yeah.
It isn't really in relation to anything to do with staffing. It's an impact of the pandemic. So when we went into our first lockdown back last summer, obviously we weren't allowed into any properties, so it was very, very difficult to actually go in and assess the requirements for any disabled facilities grants that need to be accessed and granted. Obviously there were emergency grants carried out for anything that needed to get people out of hospital, etc. So stair lifts and things like that were able to continue, but things like bathroom adaptations or changes to other rooms, etc. Did have delays because you couldn't allow access to the builders to allow to do the quotations, and you couldn't get the grants officer to go in and obviously speak to the customers to understand what their requirements were as such, and to be shown around what is actually needed. So the delays in the second quarter and the third quarter are mainly due to the fact that we couldn't access the properties. And then we had the same issue with the builders not being able to access properties once things started to open up. And again, obviously, with regards to sort of obtaining the materials and getting the quotes back in time because they were inundated with work, understandably. So it's around just sort of being able to manage that workload and manage the backlog of applications that we have, which we are working through at quite a good rate now. And obviously just getting those builders quotes in a timely manner and getting the works completed for them. But it's mainly just due to the impact of the whole of the pandemic since the last summer, really, because obviously the people that we were going into the homes of were sometimes the more vulnerable people that did need to be protected from the virus. So that is understandably one of the reasons why we had those delays.
Thank you, Tracy, for that. Yeah, certainly that was one of the areas that I had on my list to raise. And, you know, I guess really it's what's happened has happened. And I guess the focus now is going forward and what we can do to try and give some priority to try and recover that situation as the sort of restrictions are being lifted. So I hope we can do something fairly quickly to help those people. Thank you. So next, I have a question from Councillor Everard. Councillor Everard.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I had a lot of questions to ask, but I think most of them have been answered. and I think the report is fantastic. I was going to say on page 34, number of apprentices. What I wanted to know was how does the scheme work, and what are the outcomes? How many stay, and all that sort of stuff. But young ideas, you see.
Okay, I might be able to answer some of that, but I'd welcome any sort of chip in from Chris if he can add to that. So our apprenticeship scheme has changed. We used to do it where we would have an intake of apprenticeships once a year around the sort of September time, and they would either do a level 2 or level 3. We have changed the focus on that now, and apprenticeships are sort of taken on an as and when needed basis in each service. So service obviously looks at what they need with regards to recruitment, and looks to see whether or not it can be recruited through an apprenticeship scheme in the first place, rather than actually going out to full recruitment, depending on what the post is. So the posts or the apprentices that we have in post at the moment are in specific areas where we have obviously a need for somebody to come in and help us out with the work. We have their level 3 apprenticeships. We also now offer level 4 apprenticeships and level 5, going right up through to, I think it's level 7. And it's not necessarily just for external people coming into the organisation. The apprenticeships are also offered out to staff. So if staff want to sort of better themselves and get a degree, for example, they can undertake a degree apprenticeship at the same time as also working for the organisation. So we have a couple of people that are doing that, and we also have some degree apprenticeships as well, people that have come in from outside within our HR team, in our LiveWell team, and we've got about 5 level 3 apprenticeships across the organisation, 1 in customer services now, I think there's 1 coming up in environmental, but 1 in planning, another 1 in HR, I think there's some over in ops. Personally, I can say I really enjoy the apprenticeship scheme. I do think it's a valuable way of getting people into the organisation, and where they can learn a lot about what the council offers. I had an apprentice that went up until May, and I can say that she was successfully kept on in my team, as she is now Performance and Information Support Officer. And there are a number of apprentices that are successful, but the apprenticeship scheme is more to give them that work experience. And if there isn't a role for them at the end of that, we do support them in being able to obviously get applications, and they are obviously encouraged, if there are any roles that come up throughout the year in any areas of the organisation at the right level, to be able to apply for those as well. So Chris, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that at all.
I think you answered that incredibly well, Tracy. It's not a great deal I can add, but apprenticeships have changed now, that it's not just for young people. As Tracy's already said, staff can work for us and become apprentices and go through as an alternative to university and get professional qualifications. Our scheme is really very good, and most of the apprenticeships either end up working for us or find alternative work very easily. So we work the scheme very well. We get levies paid, which helps towards those professional fees. So it's a really good scheme, and it's improved over the years.
Thank you. That sounds very good. The levels, is that based on years or?
The levels of apprenticeship, it's based on where we are at the moment, so how many apprentices we currently have in the organisation. So as at the end of March, that's how many we have. So just
but you have a level that you achieve.
Oh, the level. So the level 2 or level 3 for the apprenticeship, that's in relation to what they're achieving, what it's equivalent to. So an MBQ2 or an MBQ3. So it's level 2 or level 3. That's what they come out with at the end of their apprenticeship. So it could be equivalent to GCSE, A levels, or, as I said earlier, degree.
Okay.
And masters.
Thank you very much. It's very pleasing to hear. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Everard, for your question. So let's have a quick look in. I don't think there are any more at the moment. I've got 2 more questions, if I may. Those really related to, firstly, page 33, which is the level of complaints. This was touched on in Tracy's report. I'm particularly looking at the justified complaints, and where we have over the year 197 justified complaints, which I would assume they're complaints that have been received, reviewed, and we agree with the complaint, I guess, broadly. Those that are not justified are fine, they've been through due process. So I guess really that just strikes me, I guess I've seen this before and not commented really, but it just strikes me as being quite high. I don't know if it is or not, but it does strike me quite high that there are 197 justified complaints, and the previous year 192. So year on year, it's not much different, quite frankly. I think I'd be interested to understand a little bit more about those justified complaints, to understand where those complaints lie, and perhaps as a takeaway, if you could. I guess it's not really the sort of thing to answer tonight, but perhaps ask if you could take it away and have a look and see, and give us some feedback to the group on where those justified complaints lie in terms of particular areas, and are there any particular actions to try and drive that level of complaints down in the future, because it seems to be high and static. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. No?
No, that's certainly an action I can take away.
Okay.
Obviously, I can just sort of say that the majority of them are in respect of our waste services, because we count things like if somebody's complained that their bin has been missed,
Yeah.
We will count that as a complaint. If they've said, I want to complain because you've missed my bin, we'll process that as a complaint for them. So a lot of them are around missed bin complaints, but certainly I'll get that analysis carried out for you, and I could present it at the next meeting or send it round in between time.
Just focus on the justified ones. I'm not worried about the ones that are not justified, because by definition we shouldn't need to worry about them. Okay.
Chairman, sorry, just adding to that, our complaints process actually has 3 stages. So the substantive part of the complaints that come in are at stage 1. I am one of the complaint investigators on behalf of the Chief Executive at stage 3. So there's obviously it's set out in the report. So where you're looking for the feedback on the complaints, are you looking for that to be within all 3 stages, or is that just at the stage 1 where we got the greatest of volume?
It was just on the first line item in the report. It says justified. Whichever stage it's at, it just says to me, and maybe I'm interpreting the report wrong, of course. I mean, that just says to me, we received a complaint, and we agreed that that complaint was upheld. That's what that report tells me. I don't know if I'm reading it wrong. Am I?
No, that is right, and it is reflective of all stages, that table. So we'll look at that over all of the stages. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And lastly, the other comment relates to the number of accidents. In the report, I can't see the number. Oh, here it is. Yeah. At the top of the report, where it talks about the number of reported accidents and incidents, if we look back over the last year, there's been a small increase of 5 over the previous year for the year, and indeed the last year was an increase over the previous year at 38. So the last 3 years, it's gone from 38 to 40 to 45, which obviously is the wrong direction. I guess really, just to put this into context, are there any benchmarks? Is that when I was in industry, we measured it in number of accidents per 100,000 or something like that. There's a ratio that you can calculate to say within your organisation, is this something that is at a high level or low level? So again, I think this is another takeaway, if you could, perhaps to have a look at that area. What do the ratios look like in terms of accident, and how does it compare with any sort of industry benchmarks to say whether that is a
high level or a low level? Again, it strikes me as being a bit high. I know a lot of them related to bin lorries and the like. But nevertheless, they're still accidents. They're still employees that are getting harmed, and we have a duty, of course, to make sure that those people are being, we're taking actions to minimise the number of accidents. So, I think perhaps if you could have that as a takeaway, perhaps look at a measurement of a ratio and looking against that, compare that with some industry standards, if you may.
Yep. That's absolutely fine. I'll take that one away to the health and safety team so they can get that report sorted out. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think, right, yeah, I think, Councillor Evard, do you come back for another question?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. Over to you.
On the health and safety one again.
Yeah.
It's where there's a number of near miss accidents. What is the process involved in that? Can we improve the safety or what? This happened to be a council worker with a waste truck and almost went into oncoming traffic. But are there any enhancements we can make to the safety of those workers? Thanks.
So I think any sort of incidents that are reported, we will always look at what we can do to improve the situation, how we could take action if there is any action to be taken. Obviously, I'd have to speak to the health and safety team again to see what they actually do and what the questions are. So if that's okay, I'll take that one away as well, and I can report back to the board. That's okay. The committee.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Good. Thank you, Tracy. So there may be another little question here. Oh, yeah, Councillor Raymond, you're in for a late
Thank
question.
you, Chairman. If I could dwell more.
Sure.
I have one question on the same area, health and safety. Tracy, on the report on page 35, it says in last quarter, all but 3 accidents were reported by the waste crews. My question is, I'm sure there is a training, health and safety training provided to the waste crews. What can we do as authority to prevent those accidents, or what training can be given, or extra training can be given, or tools can provide to the waste crew so that we can avoid those accidents in future? Thank you.
Okay. There's obviously training that is carried out at all times. Unfortunately, obviously, the waste crew do have to work in some quite horrendous conditions sometimes, in all weathers. And a lot of the accidents that are noted are as a result of either a slip or trip due to the icy weather or wet weather. They are provided with protective clothing and equipment, so they should have the right shoes that they're wearing to sort of prevent slips. But if it's icy conditions, sometimes it's still quite hard to prevent that. They have obviously got, like I said, the protective equipment. They do carry out risk assessments, etc. But obviously, again, I can take that away so you are aware of what the training needs or the training requirements are, and what training is delivered to all crew members that are out there.
Okay, thank you. Just again, sorry to labour on this point again, is what sort of organisation is in place for managing health and safety issues like this? Is there does the council have a health and safety group that meets on a frequency basis? It just I'm not aware of this at all. I guess you probably, I'm seeing a couple of nodding heads, so perhaps you just briefly enlighten us.
Yeah, so we have a health and safety team, and we have a health and safety committee. So the health and safety committee, it has representation from all service areas, sometimes more than one person, as they will obviously go through all of the reports, all of the accidents, areas that are coming up, training requirements, etc. I can't even remember everything else that's on the agenda, but they meet, I think it's on a quarterly basis, and I think it's a requirement that heads of service attend, or if they don't attend, then they send a nominated representative, as well as any sort of health and safety representatives that are within that team as well. So I think each team also has a health and safety representative that you can take any health and safety matters to, and then they can raise them higher up the team if they need to. So.
Yeah. So typically, would you normally have operatives from the waste team on that group?
Yes, so you have, I think there's the managers that attend, so you have the head of service that will attend, and there'll be other service unit managers that will attend those meetings on a regular basis, because obviously they are one of the areas that are contributing towards those figures. So.
Yeah. I was actually referring more to the people that are actually on the dust carts.
I don't think we necessarily have anybody on the dust carts, but obviously how it works within their service areas, they will have representatives within that service that will be a health and safety representative, but I'm not sure within the operations team who that would be, so I'd need to find that out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. It's useful feedback. Thank you. So just have a look on the list again. I don't think we've got any more. No, Councillor Raymond was the last. So, okay. So I believe that no further questions from any other members before I close it off. No, that looks okay. So, well, thank you very much once again, Tracy. You always support us very well at these meetings, and we really appreciate that. And you have a good knowledge of across the subject, so really appreciate that. And thank you very much for coming this evening and helping to support our committee. So, so I think that is all. So I just want to remind members that the report that has been presented tonight is for members, that this report is for noting only. So thank you to Tracy for your report and the responses of members. Tracy, if you wish to leave the meeting and any other members wish to leave the meeting, then please, you're free to do so now. Again, if you wish to stay, then again, as always, you're more than welcome to stay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, members, we will now proceed to item 7, which is scrutiny of the commercialisation second evidence gathering session. Members, this meeting marks the committee's second evidence gathering session for the Scrutiny Committee into commercialisation. James Sinclair, the commercial manager at the council, is once again in attendance in order to help and support our evidence gathering for the review. James has kindly prepared a short report which can be found on pages 48 to 50 of your agendas, and a PowerPoint presentation that will be based around the queries raised in the last evidence gathering committee on the 2nd of June. Members should have received hard copies of the presentation along with the agenda, and unless he stipulates otherwise, I invite members to ask their questions to James following the presentation. Thank you, James, for your attendance and bearing with us this evening so far, and so over to you for you to present your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Really, we introduced the work of the commercial team at our last meeting. This presentation builds on the information that we provided there, but also, as you'll note from the earlier item around the investment and development programme, this commercial work stream really builds heavily and is governed by that programme. So there is a certain amount of overlap in terms of that activity that you'll note. If I could have the next slide, please, Emma. Okay, so a question raised at our last session was around the return on investment, so the cost of the commercial team. So as a reminder to members, there are 2 members of the commercial team. And what we wanted to show here was the annual income and savings delivered by that team, and the return on investment against that. Now, clearly, the team covers a range of activities, some of which are traded services, so we can see the net costs against some of those. Others are third-party savings against procurement activity, and more still are efficiency projects that we've worked on and supported. So what we've shown here really is against the delivery of the annual income and savings, it's a combination of those activities, there's a return on investment of 60%. We're taking a bit of a conservative estimate on there to allow for any net costs that we perhaps haven't anticipated within there. And also we show what the potential return on investment would be based on the pipeline that the team has been working on, and which feeds again into the investment and development programme over the next 4 years. So we have a pipeline there for the commercial work stream specifically of 415k with the return on investment noted there. So as I said earlier, members, the support from the commercial team goes up and above some of these projects. So there are areas which we haven't included in this, such as our support for the successful application for the digital demand responsive transport schemes for Essex, for Braintree in the Essex Square, which had a funding of 2.5 million. The work we put into the National Leisure Recovery Fund over the last year to support our leisure provider Fusion, with again an award of 350,000 there. Supports for the funding bid for Horizon 120, and also the work that we carry on an ongoing basis for the Enterprise Centre, where we provide support around the continued leasing and ensuring that we have full tenancy at the Enterprise Centre, which I'm pleased to say that we do. So if I could move on to the next slide, please, Emma. What we want to do here, members, is to just provide a couple of case studies which build on the one-liners that we provided in the introduction to commercialisation last time round. So the first of those is around roundabout sponsorship. So a piece of work that we did early on in the kind of birth, if you like, of the commercial team was to look across the sponsorship officer role and the Enterprise House conference facilitator. So to look at the most efficient way to drive income. We have an Enterprise Centre, it needs to be staffed, we have meetings there, and it serves a number of purposes clearly. It serves a purpose in terms of generating income to the authority, but also a really important purpose in providing small businesses accommodation through the leasing of offices there, but also affordable conferencing and meeting space to the district. So both to those using the Enterprise Centre, but also to the wider park and indeed to Braintree as a whole. So that facilitator will work across that coordinating meetings. But what we found when we did the exercise was actually, you know, once the meeting's there and once the facilitation's ongoing, then there's large periods of the day when we could make use of that person's time to do something else. So we combined the role of the sponsorship officer and the conference facilitator. And so whilst meetings are ongoing, we have now a salesperson who's able to drive sales across a number of traded services across the council. And that's contributed here to the increase in roundabout sponsorship. So we see a 70% increase in our sponsorship income between 2017-18 and 19-20. This was clearly impacted by the pandemic. This was due really to our inability to be able to contact roundabout sponsors during the pandemic, because they'd closed their business for a period of time, so a number of hospitality businesses, and we weren't able to get the continuity of the sponsorship that we rely on. So that took a slight dip there, but I'm pleased to advise that going into 21-22, we have come back up and increased, in fact, to the 46,000 figure. So we've actually made that target now, and we're working to exceed that target over the remainder of the year and identify new roundabouts as developers are building roundabouts. We're able to sponsor those, so that provides further income growth in this area. We've also provided advice around that to Basildon Council and provided some income from sharing our sales skills, and that's something that we really try and drive here. Actually, if we can share that across the Essex commercial network, then we will, and we'll share services so we can really make the most efficient use of the teams that we have. So if we could move on now, Emma. And the second case study I wanted to touch on was shared payroll. So again, this was a one-liner and the last session. But as part of ongoing relationship between Braintree, Colchester and Epping, we were able to build a trust thanks to our head of HR, Helen Crissock, with other heads of HR, and we were able to look at what the opportunities are available to us to share resource across there. Now, clearly, payroll, one or two people were in the service, important service, certainly to our staff, making sure that there's always resource available to undertake the payroll function, and there's a resilience issue. We wanted to address that. And so we did a process mapping exercise based around Six Sigma principles, and we identified a number of areas where we could use the payroll system much more effectively, so reducing dependency on staff time, but also where we could join those processes together so we could operate in a similar way across the authorities. Now, by doing that, that allowed us to identify a time saving of 15 hours per day. And then that allowed us to create a shared payroll team that could go across those three authorities. So this launched in 2019. It was fantastically supported, I should say, by Victoria Braybrook, who was head of payroll at the time and now is the head of payroll across the shared service. And Victoria really was instrumental in terms of that process mapping exercise as well. This achieved both increased resilience, which was a really key aim, but also savings to Braintree Council of 23k and across the three authorities of 100k. But also that's allowed us to build on this. So we now have a really good structure, efficient structure in place that we know is lean. And we were able to share the benefits of that with other authorities. So Brentwood, Rochford and Castlepoint came on as of the 1st of April, and we're able to get more cost-effective payroll services via us and more resilient payroll services. But also that helped us to, again, offset the costs, further offset the cost of our payroll service, bringing in income of around about 20k, so a further 20k. So that's a really significant growth if you look at that between it launching back in 2019 and it growing into 2021, so an increase of 60%. We've got additional payroll officers, so a split role now between two payroll officers, providing resilience there, but also importantly allowing us the opportunity to grow further. Taking on further payrolls and again reducing the cost to the authority of payroll services. So I think that takes us into that, Emma. Move on. Now, I think this is a bit of deja vu, unfortunately, because we presented this as part of the investment and development programme earlier. But what it does show is May and June activity that happened. So we had a number of meetings across managers to make managers aware of the programme. We built that pipeline up over those 3 months to the 1.86 that we discussed earlier. And we made sure that we were bringing staff along all the way across the journey to develop the pipeline, but to feel very much part of this programme, because that's how it's going to be successful, by members and staff delivering ideas and sharing the challenge together. So that is really what's inherently behind this slide, showing the activity we're doing to support that. Thank you. And I'll take that, Chairman, to questions.
Okay. Well done. Thank you very much, as always, James, for that presentation. I think you certainly demonstrated at the beginning there that the commercial team is adding value in terms of what you and the team are doing and have done for a while now. Certainly, I went on a webinar, training webinar about commercialization towards the end of last year, and one of the big things they were driving was the need to have a commercialization manager and a commercialization activity, if you like, embedded in the council. And clearly this council is already in that position and already able to demonstrate, and you've demonstrated, I think, that the value that you're adding across the organisation and hopefully will do going forward. So well done for that, and to you and the team. Regarding the roundabout sponsorship, that looks like it's taken off and good. How much further do you think that could possibly go in terms of, well, within the district first, but obviously if you can sell the services outside, that's even better. But stick within the district, really. Is obviously is a limit, but how do you see that going forward?
I think we are, if I'm honest, approaching that limit now. We'd like to be Milton Keynes and have lots more roundabouts to be able to sponsor on, but we're kind of reaching a natural limit. But what we are doing is looking at alternative options around advertising, because actually what it does do, up and above delivering income clearly, but it provides a really valuable option to local businesses to advertise to their communities. So rather than kind of having to go through national advertising or one of the other schemes, actually it's a really visible way to get local advertising there. So we're looking at options around digital advertising boards to build on that capacity, looking at further advertising across some of our car parks, and looking at other sponsorship opportunities across other areas that we hold. So we are building upon that. What we'd like to do is to support and grow that with other districts and share that as a service, much as we have with Payroll. So I think that's a really valuable thing we could offer. And we have had discussions with Highways around the potential for sponsorship on those roundabouts, but unfortunately we haven't been particularly successful in that one so far.
Okay, good, right, thank you. Yeah, I think going other areas of sponsorship and advertising is certainly a good way to go, that's for sure. I've got a question from Councillor Sphere. Councillor Sphere, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I did have two questions, but the question you just asked James was the one I was going to ask, so I'll move rapidly to my second one. James, on the shared payroll, you mentioned that increased staff are now on board and that we've now amounted to 6. I presume we are potentially in discussions to expand this service, but to invite and persuade other local authorities as well, because this seems to be working very well. And I imagine that other local authorities potentially are quite keen to come on board.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer. Absolutely. So we have the growth of those 3 authorities that I referred to earlier. We kind of allow a little bit of bedding in time to allow those payrolls to mobilise, particularly as these past payrolls had to move to a new payroll system. So that involved a significant amount of work, not just us supporting them on their existing payroll system, which what's happened with the original 3, but moving to these payrolls to an entirely new payroll system. So we are doing that now, and we have a slight shift around in some of the staff, so we're just waiting for that to bed in. But then after that, we've already had some discussions with other authorities, but also we've had discussions with the East of England Local Government Association around doing case study on this as an example of good practice, which will further promote the work that we've been doing and seek additional customers through that.
Okay. Thank you for that, James. Does anybody else have any further questions? I don't see anything else coming in the chat box at the moment. Okay. I guess one of the areas I'd like to see us move on in terms of commercialisation, I think you've given some very good flavour of some good projects that are happening, which gives us confidence that things are happening, and this no doubt will play a big part of contribution towards the overall drive to hit the 1.6 million plus. I think what I'd like to see, you in your last presentation, you identified a list of areas where traded services, and I think I'd like to see us review more closely that list of traded services to get an overview, if you like, of against each one of those, what level of income they generate, and I guess really we should be looking at net income after a cost, I guess, really, or perhaps more correctly gross income actually, so that we can get some idea, some feel of what the level of commercialisation is in the council today, and the magnitude of where that lies, and if you like, the benefit that it's bringing as a confidence builder of where we can then springboard for going forward. I think so. I think perhaps if I may ask you as a takeaway, start to have a look at that, and maybe with finance team perhaps to try to put some numbers around what the traded services, which I think is the focus of the commercialisation, and indeed adding into that the shared services element as well, because there's some areas which probably will be no-go areas from a point of view of legislation and the like. So we perhaps need to understand which one those areas are and box those off, and then perhaps scope where there are potential areas for further growth. So perhaps that is something I could ask you to take away and have a look at in the meantime, come back to us on our next meeting, if you like.
Absolutely, Chairman. Yeah, we have a list of current traded services and their net positions. So we will do an update on that, and we can bring that back to yourself and to the group. Okay, fantastic. I think that would be really useful for us to see. But some great stuff, James. Really is you and the team are doing some good stuff, and what Councillor Butler and the team presented tonight complements, what puts into context what we're looking at specifically around commercialisation here. So, yeah, no, I think thank you for the work you do and the support you're giving us. So, thank you, Chair. Before I close, then, is there anybody else like to come in for the last question? Anything else you'd like to like James to take away? Anything else in addition to what I said that you may like James to have a look for us to come back next time? Again, as before, by all means, don't be shy. Follow up after the meeting and send in anything into James or to Emma. And I'm sure that will work its way through the system to contribute to the overall scrutiny.
Chairman, if it assists members with developing some ideas, obviously we do have the terms of reference, which was shared with members with the original agenda when we started this scrutiny review. It may aid members to refresh their minds to those terms of reference for the scrutiny review and to reflect upon what they have heard today in the two evidence gathering session. And obviously we've had the complementary session under agenda item 5 with Cabinet being with us this evening. Although it's not strictly part of our evidence gathering, it's information that this committee has received, which does complement the work that James has presented this evening as well. Obviously, you can tell with the duplications of one of the slides in both presentations. But just to remind members, we are not here to fix or decide what goes forward for commercialisation. We are being the critical lens on the council's position in commercialisations. So when we ask for ideas to come forward for how we explore this topic further, it's we are reflecting, we're examining. We can make proposals once we've gone through the scrutiny review to Cabinet. As I remind you frequently, your recommendations should be evidence-based. So if there are concepts that you want to examine, then please let us know through email. Please, if you can email the governance service, because then we work with James to make sure we get all those ideas together. But if members would like to receive the terms of reference again, if they've filed their papers, we'll send that out to them tomorrow. Reflect on the 2 sessions we've had. We will give you links to the minutes that have already been produced, which is part of your evidence to date. And then to sort of take any suggestions forward. Chairman, we can also, whilst we will always try to bring all matters to the committee, there is times where we need to have some management meetings on the scrutiny review, which we traditionally do with the lead officers and the chair and the vice chairman, to just make sure that we're on track. And obviously we can arrange that with you, and then any work that comes out of that we will share with the committee, either informally through email, or we can do an update report as part of the evidence gathering at the next committee. So if members would like the terms of reference and the minutes, we will do that for you.
Okay, thank you for that, Emma. I think it is always a good to remind ourselves of what we're heading for, what we're trying to achieve here. So please, yes, circulate those again to members for information. So, okay, yeah, I'm happy to if you want to have a management meeting any time, of course, to have a look at where we're at. So happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Again, last call for questions then. So I've got nothing else in the chat box. So in which case, this is, thank you for James very much for this evening, taking the trouble to be with us this evening. Really appreciate that. And, you know, you're free to leave the meeting and any time now.
Thank you,
hang
Chairman.
on if you wish.
Thank you, members. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good night.
Chair.
Good night. Thank you, Councillor McGee. Good night. Okay. Right. Thank you, members. The report, we'll take the report as being noted, and indeed the comments made, and we'll ask the Governance Office to progress our lines of inquiry and report back to us, to myself and the Chairman. Okay. We'll now proceed with agenda item 8, which is the decision planner. Members, we're asked to note the decision planner for the period 1st of August 2021 to 31st of October 2021. Before we do this, do members have any issues that they would like to raise in respect of the decision planner? Please indicate in the chat function. No. No, there doesn't appear to be any questions there. So thank you very much, members. I have members' agreement that the decision planner was being noted, and I will take your silence as assent. Okay, there's no comments. Okay, so thank you, members. The decision planner has been noted. Members, there's no urgent business for this evening. This item concludes our business for this evening, so I'll close the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee at 21:11. Thank you for your attendance this evening, and for those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. I will now hand you over to the meeting facilitator.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, before I ask the webcasting officer to terminate the broadcast, please can I remind members that we will retain performance data relating to your links to the meeting this evening. This is retained just in case we have a legal challenge to this meeting. Just to remind members, this is a non-decision making meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to thank all those watching the YouTube broadcast and ask the webcasting officer to terminate the broadcast. Thank you.